Okay, so let's do this panel a little more dynamic because we have, more two panels to discuss, and I want to invite Jason Shelton. So here, practical person. So he's former mayor of Tulepo, Mississippi, represents Democratic Party. Today he represents the presidential administration as regional administrator for General Services Administration region in Biden-Harris presidential appointee. He with us today personally, and his case it's very interesting because it's pretty Republican state, and here have several wins of Democrats. So we'll see how he did that. Also, we have on Zoom Torin Wilkins. We have him, or still no? Torin must be on. Okay. I also want to invite Karen Mulhauser. She's prominent political manager, and she worked as senior advisor in the presidential campaign of Barack Obama. As a leader of the consulting company Mulhauser and Associates, she can deliver consulting services for non-profits and also for candidates. And she worked in this sector more than 35 years. And originally she have experience in every election cycle from 1970s. So thank you so much for joining us today. And Mariam Razi, political manager and government relations professionals from Toronto, Canada, and she also actively participates in current government relations projects and in election campaign in Canada. So we also wait Torin, right, as a speaker online. And I have short presentation for this discussion. Because we will discuss cases, and I have a little overview about elections, in the world. And Irina, if you give to Valia also.
We have some tech issues. We'll try to sort it out.
Okay. So if she will be a host, she can show my presentation with turnout information.
If we bring back the connection, but
okay.
Just go ahead and we'll
Okay.
try.
I have short analytics for you. It's like analytics about elections last year. I think it's pretty interesting in such conferences, so I grabbed some information about turnout. So the biggest turnout it's turnout in Australia. Because if they don't go to elections, they pay a fee. So that's why they have the greatest turnout in the world, which it's 95%. So pretty big turnout. Only 5% of people want to pay fee because they don't came to elections. I said maybe with taxes they have the same situation. Then Malta, Sweden, Denmark, Philippines, Brazil. And Israel in the middle, lower turnout in worldwide we have in Bulgaria, Barbados, Senegal, and not so much in United States. So I will share this analytics with you also. Second, my information is information about cost of election. And here, of course, United States, it's the champion, So if compare, Clinton and Trump financing, so it was more than 2 billions, and last elections also was more than $2 billion every election campaign. So that's why our community also work in this sector, because it's a lot of money, let's be honest, to work on. And also, what elections was the most, biggest turnout and interest in this year, 2023. So our analytics prepare some information about elections in Kazakhstan. So it was pretty big turnout, 69%, but obviously we can't, prove all information from Kazakhstan voter procedures because it's still democracy development there. But it also was interesting because it's first elections of Akims in this year. So it's first type of these elections in Central Asia. So our manager thinks that it's pretty interesting fact for you. And if you're not so much interested in Kazakhstan policy, we can say that turnout in the United States also not so big, and if in 1990, so 100 years ago, it was 73%. So our ancestors was more political active than we, as we can see, and in 2000 it was less than 50%, and now it's 66 and 9% in United States. So one more issue to discuss, about like turnout and interest in election in United States. One more issue which interesting is European studies that turnout to elections to European Parliament not so big. So people really not interested in coming to elections to elect their members of European Parliament. Also we said that congressional spendings 2020 it was federal spending on 2020 elections dropped 14 billions and was the most expensive elections in United States history. 14 billions looks interesting. One more time we want to discuss issue. Is it good to have experience of Australia to have fines for not to vote? So also in this panel discussion we will discuss these issues, which important trends in political management business, also we will discuss role of we will discuss also a role of social media, of other tools, and so on and so forth. So firstly, I will give word to Karen to reflect to these numbers. So one more time, it's pretty much money here in United States which we spend for elections, not for green project like hospitals, but for elections. Is it good as a trend? Is it good for competition of ideas? This trend. And what about turnout? Is it problem or it's not problem? Because I know that your direct case, which you work on as a case, it's case of making higher turnout and registration of voters. So please, your points about
I
that.
want to agree with the previous panel in terms of the super PACs, that if we could do away with the super PACs that have all of this dark money that no one knows where it comes from and where it goes, that would be very valuable. And it would, I think, change our numbers. But the kind of work that I have done to change the voter turnout numbers, well, first of all, in the 70s, I've been around a while. In the 70s, I was running NARAL, the National Abortion Rights Action League, and started a political action committee. This was before super PACs. And because it became clear that the issue was going to be decided in Congress in the elections. And so, and at that time our mantra was, if it doesn't bring workers to campaigns and voters to the polls, just don't do it. And so we were trying to turn out, but that was my first education on turning out voters. And then I did the same kind of activities with a couple of disarmament organizations that I started in the 80s. But it's been in more recent years that I've really focused on voter engagement and voter turnout. And I think I have proof that it works. I had a protocol that I called Trusted Sources, which I worked with the heads of nonprofit organizations, often with 501c3 groups, those that can have tax-deductible contributions but cannot endorse candidates. So they thought they couldn't even say the word election in an election year. I worked with the heads of these organizations to help them understand that, yes, you can do voter registration and get out the vote, and you just can't endorse any of the candidates or make your messaging sound like you're endorsing one of the candidates. And I've done this several times. The last time was in 2020, and I called it Every Woman Vote 2020. And each time I did this, I worked with a data firm that send the millions of names from the organizations to this data firm, and they would provide updated contact information, missing cell phones, correct emails, and they also provided voter engagement information. So the organization leaders would know which of their members were not even registered to vote, and so I helped them do specific messaging to them that was different than the messaging to the people who vote all the time. And I did this every time, and every single time we were able to prove that that kind of trusted sources, getting a message like register and vote, is more impactful, has a greater impact if it comes from somebody you know, rather than a stranger calling you or knocking on the door or writing a letter. That's very effective, but it's even more effective if it's from a trusted source, because the data firm would then afterwards send the voting information to the organizations, and in every single case, whether it was the women's groups or the peace groups, or just general nonprofits, their impact on voter turnout was greater than the national turnout numbers. In every single case, every time I did this. So when we talk about what is going to be an effective way, and there are other groups that are now starting to do this, and they call it, what did we say they called it? The organizational, relational organizing, yes. And it makes sense, doesn't it? And so I've done this with the abortion issue, and I think that when abortion is on the ballot, we saw this last year, we saw it in previous years since Dobbs, that people turn out, Republican women turn out as well as Democrat women. So I think that there are just some issues, and I think that gun rights will be another issue, and I think issues of climate. I mean, saving our planet so humans have a place to live is one of the most important human rights issues that we can think of. So.
Thank you. As I got, you think that turnout lower one more time because people don't care about mostly issues, or you think that it will go in higher because people, polarized and care? So what's your prediction about turnout in United States
Yeah,
right.
Well, I think the division in our country and the polarization is sad. It's terrible. It could ruin our democracy. But I want to thank you and the other organizers for bringing together a group like this where there are Democrats and Republicans, and maybe we can find a way to work together. And I think that if we could do that, at least some of the issues would benefit from it. But turnout, I think people turn out with positive messaging, and when the previous panel that talked about economy as being the most important issue, I think the people who support, as we heard on the panel, that the economy, your life is better under Trump, there can be an argument from the Democrat side that there's employment has increased, and anyway, I think that on all of the issues, presenting a positive message, that's just me, maybe. I would rather think positive than negative.
Thank you, Karen. I have a question to Jason. Yeah, we can share to Mike. It's look monumental, I prefer, like in this way. But anyway, so Jason, you let's go to. We talk a lot about presidential elections. About super PACs, about most funded elections. So let's move to municipal level. You was measure it's in pretty aggressive, with pretty aggressive base, so it's not so much Democrats in your state. So can you share your case directly, how you do your campaigning? And in some details, so what tools do you use in your town? What was effective? What wasn't effective? What about turnout? Do you work with messaging like by yourself, or how you communicate with party and like opinion leaders from party? So share please your direct experience, as some iconic experience for municipal way. Yeah.
Now, how long do I have to explain all that?
As usually 5 minutes for most important part. Yeah.
So I'm Jason Shelton. I was the mayor of Tupelo, Mississippi. As you might can imagine, Mississippi is a red state. We, for at least 20 years, the Republicans have completely controlled the state. Something that gets lost in that is while there's continued Republican success, the Democratic candidates for governor, the special election for Senate, consistently get above 45%, so 46, 47, even 48%. They just haven't gotten over the threshold to actually win on a statewide level. So it's solid red in that the Republican always wins, but how close it is in a lot of the elections kind of gets overshadowed. So I was the first Democrat elected in Tupelo, Mississippi in about 30 years. Tupelo is a city that voted about 60% for Trump both times. And I got 60%, 59% as a Democrat, and then my re-election campaign actually did not have a Republican opponent. So was very proud of the job that we did. I liked a lot of what Jay and the gentleman online were saying. To paraphrase a little bit about the candidate being true to themselves and their message, to me, sincerity, especially on a local election, sells. The fact that the candidate actually cares. I was a little bit fortunate in that I was kind of the hometown boy in the election, and my opponent was from the evil city of Jackson, Mississippi. He was a Republican president of city council, and the newspaper actually did an article about both of our kind of growing up in politics, and then they kind of leaned in heavily on that my opponent was voted most likely to be mayor of Jackson. And they had pictures of me and my high school football outfit from uniform from Tupelo. A lot of it, messaging, voter turnout is crucial. One thing I was extremely proud of, in the South, race, is just a dominant factor, especially in Mississippi. My numbers as a Democrat in Tupelo, Mississippi, I got exactly 100 fewer votes than President Obama got as far as the BBAP, the turnout in the city of Tupelo. And that combined with sort of a hodgepodge effect of family, friends, high school connections, small town politics, those factors all played together. As far as the fundraising, certainly I think we're being recorded. I do not want to compare myself to the skill of President Obama's team or those prolific fundraising machines, but on a much smaller scale, we did all of those things. So we had, online just called 10 to win and asked everyone to give $10. The mindset behind that is if someone gives to your campaign, whether it's $2 or $2,000 or any other amount, they're vested in your campaign and they're committed to your success. So we tried to do that, the widespread. In Mississippi, the campaign laws are a little different. You can, of course, give yourself or loan yourself any amount that you want. Corporations are capped at $1,000 donations, but individuals can give unlimited amounts. So, we tried to do all of those, have, different fundraiser events. And then I would just kind of wrap that up, and we can do any kind of questions you want. In any election, from city council, mayor, president of the United States, I don't think that, we can certainly talk about the division, the hate messages, all that of we hate the same people. But I also do not think there's a substitute for hard work. Voters want to see that candidate beating the bushes, doing something every single day. And our campaign used social media very effectively on that, to the point where people would, I would get comments of, I'm tired watching you. And I was very tired myself, but I mean, it was grueling, politics, the hours are long. But also, just candidly, not every single picture was taken that day. You had a team that strategically posted those messages on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, or whatever, to show the different things that we were doing every single day. And then just back to the same, what we were very successful in doing was being the more sincere candidate, as far as we want to see the city of Tupelo succeed. Like, I'm not just running to be mayor. This is my home. This is where I was born. This is where I'll be buried. This is where my family is. Failure is not an option for us. Everything I own is here. I promise you, I want Tupelo to succeed. And I was fortunate in I didn't have to make that up. That I was sincere. But I say that to just reemphasize that sincerity, positivity, those things can be winning, at least on a local level still.
Thank you. We directly interested in your experience and in the same campaigns, because we will be happy if Obama now watch our conference, but I think mostly people who members of IGAPA, it's people who really work on local level, on level of parliament. So that's why I have one additional question. So can you explain one, town hall or house meeting which was pretty successful, and how many people who your supporters you get from every such type of meeting, and then we compare this with Canadian experience, and it will be interesting. Just story of one meeting and results.
Just the story of one meeting, now I'm on the spot. Well, the first neighborhood meeting that I went into, the city manager was up there just getting completely yelled at, and I didn't know if I'd made the right decision or not. So that was one of the first. But we did what you'd call town halls, but neighborhood association meetings. And the very first one I did was at a group, mainly people with physical limitations, and we put it on, I guess it was Facebook Live or something like that. The media picked it up, but it's kind of one thing I say a lot in life and politics both, it's better to be lucky than good. The photograph, my opponent was an older gentleman, and he just so happened to have like a real grouchy look on his face, and like kind of contorted like that in the picture, and I happened to be smiling and talking like this, and that's the picture that was on the front page of the newspaper the next day. So Jay, it's kind of better to be lucky than good sometimes. And that kind of started building momentum. And then to get back to fundraising, it's a double-edged sword. It's kind of like the cliche of if you see somebody, you apply for a job, but you can't get a job without experience, and you say, well, how do I get experience without a job? Raising money is very similar to that. People want to know that you can win before they give you money, but they don't think you can win until you raise money. And so things like that, the picture in the paper, help start getting people to give money. And at first it was a checks of, well, he might have a chance, and then closer to the campaign where I thought, hey, we might actually win, was when the people that I knew that were very involved in politics and kind of always on the side of the winner, they started wanting to be involved in the campaign too.
Thank you. And last question for 5 seconds. How many meetings you hold every day?
As
With
mayor or
voters?
campaign?
As a campaign. So how much?
Oh, just nonstop all day long. I mean, so in small town, Tupelo, Mississippi, like literally from the coffee shops, you are somewhere at all times. Neighborhood meetings at night, fundraisers at someone's house, the phone calls nonstop, text messaging to your fingers hurt. Like it's messaging in campaigns is not for the faint of heart. I mean, there's a lot of hard work involved.
Thank you. Miriam, to compare this experience, one more time, not all our audience is people from United States, so that's why we must understand that even fundraising practices is pretty different in different parts of the world. And for example, many countries haven't voter registration as a process. So Miriam, can you explain your experience of leading election campaign as campaign manager? And maybe you also can present direct case with some tools and compare these tools with other international experience. So I'm not sure that all audience here also know all election procedures in Canada, and I'm sure that elections in Canada it's more affordable for candidates than here. So am I right or am I wrong? And voter behavior in Canada, it's the same or different? So it's so much impact of social media or not so much? Is it the same fundraising procedures or not the same? So let's start also from basics before your case to give people fully understanding how in Canada elections look like. And how it's cost, of course, because all here are pragmatic people who want to have contracts, So please, floor is yours.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a whole lot to sort of cover. I am by no means an elections finance expert, so I think what I would comment on is just my personal experience in sort of managing one of the key elections that took place in the country. But just to set some context for folks here and obviously those who are joining us online, and to sort of bring everyone up to speed about the current political landscape in Canada, I think it's a little bit important to understand the background of that. As many of you know, in Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has now been in power since 2008. He was, he was essentially elected to form a minority government in 2021 and has now completed 3 terms in office. He is now hoping that he would get a 4th term, which would be quite an anomaly for Canada because in the history of Canada, no Prime Minister has ever completed 4 terms. The problem with him right now and the Liberal Party as we speak is that he's doing terribly in the polls at the moment. Every Canadian is pretty much exhausted with Prime Minister Trudeau right now. And 60% of Canadians want him to either step down or resign. He is also trailing very, very, very poorly and behind the Conservatives who are now leading in double digits. So if Canada were to sort of host elections today, only 22% of Canadians would actually vote for Justin Trudeau. So it's a pretty bleak picture for the Liberal Party and of course for Prime Minister Trudeau. But a lot of that has to do with kind of what happened in 2021, which was a major election that took place for us. I had personally managed the campaign for Deputy Minister Chrystia Freeland, who's essentially the second woman in command behind Justin Trudeau. And although my team and I were fairly successful in getting her, almost 50% of the votes from her riding, so she was successful in winning her riding back. We sort of encountered very similar challenges to what Prime Minister Trudeau overall encountered in Canada. And a lot of it had to do with basically three separate things. So we had very poor timing, that was one. The second key factor was, it was our first COVID-19 election campaign. So, very few of us had any experience in sort of branding that campaign really, really well. And third factor was the Liberal brand has over time really weakened in Canada and continues to weaken today. So those are sort of like the three sort of key challenges that my team and I were essentially facing. And I think that the COVID-19 was a very unique case because it sort of created a political brand management crisis for the entire team, primarily because we had already gone for elections in 2019, and then Prime Minister Trudeau called for a snap election in 2021. The idea was that the Liberals were high in the polls, and they figured that if they were to sort of go back to the polls right now, because they've done such a great job of vaccinating Canadians, almost 77 to 75%, that Canadians would essentially give him a majority. And that is not what ended up happening. People were exhausted. We had protests all across the country because we had some of the most stringent COVID-19 restrictions. And after the vaccines, most folks on the campaign trail that we sort of met with or talked to, they just kind of wanted to know, well, you've already done the vaccines, now what next? Like, what is it that you can do for me now? So that was one key challenge. And the second really important challenge, I think a lot of folks here have talked about this, and that we were also experiencing, was sort of like a rise in hate politics and anger politics. We had, voices from the right and the left, both radical, kind of come out of the closet for the first time. And it was a very unique phenomenon for Canada to manage, because we've historically been very sort of social left-center democracy, and this is a current problem that's sort of amplified by disinformation. We recently had a foreign election meddling situation with China interfering in the election of 2019 and 2022, allegedly, and the Liberals have now called an inquiry to sort of dig into that a little bit further. So that really changes the landscape for the country. So I mean, I guess I was just highlighting some of the key challenges there. Landscape, and that's what's kind of going on with the Trudeau Liberals as well.
Thank you, Mariam. So the next time we also will invite image maker to talk about importance of nice socks on elections. Yeah, you have big experience in that. You can.
Well, and he's been looking, so it works out.
Yeah, it works. It works. Our coordinator said that I have minus 10 minutes on our panel. So I will finish with some blitz question to you. So blitz question is question like for 30 seconds. So what is your most effective tool which you use on your campaign? I mean, what tool you like mostly? Social media work, phone banking, town halls. So what is your favorite tool and why?
I think I'll go back to what I said before, which is to reach out to people that you know, either with social media or with mail or phone calls, because the people, if you hear it from somebody you know and trust, you're more likely to get involved in elections.
Right, very wise, very wise. Jason, what about you?
I don't know if it's the phrase correctly, but I think you just have to do it all. Like you have to do social media, you have to do door-to-door, you have to do phone calls, emails, direct mail, you have to do every single bit of it. And the unfortunate, ugly truth is you have to worry people to death. And I got tickled in my campaign, and super respected, kind of elder statesman
of the city saw me at an event. He said, I can't wait for this, and he was supportive, very friendly, but he said, I can't wait for this campaign to be over. I'm tired of seeing your name in my mailbox. So you have to do it all.
Yeah, I think I would second what Jason just said. I think you've got to sort of use everything you can in the toolbox to kind of get a full comprehensive picture of what's happening on the ground. And specifically, I think door-to-door conversations with as many people as you possibly can. Because sometimes I've noticed that in campaigns, there's a big divide between what's happening on the ground and what the campaign office perceives to be happening on the ground. So I think it's really important that you have a direct connection to the grassroots and you've got a good read on what the grassroots has done.
Thank you. And from my perspective, like my favorite tool is door-to-door campaign because it's you can count results, and if you have a good message and good volunteers, you can gather more than 35% of supporters. So, and of course, social media it works, but it's more work of your PR staff than you, and working with volunteers, it's always less expensive and make more strategic effort. So thank you so much for your time. Minus 10 minutes, it's not so bad. Yeah. So thank you so much to our panelists. Yes.